Going from 65 inches to 75 inches adds 33% more glass to your wall. Almost nobody adds 33% more backlight. Hi, this is Nextgen Picks. That gap, 33% more glass, the same backlight budget, is why two people buy the identical 75-inch set, hang it in two different rooms, and one of them loves it. The other has it boxed up by Sunday. Here's what's actually happening. The 4 reasons a 75-inch set gets sent back have nothing to do with picture quality, nothing to do with the panel at all. And look, I'll walk you through all 4, plus the one number that tells you which of these sets is worth what you're paying. If this channel saved you money before, subscribing keeps it independent. Nobody pays me to like anything. 4 reasons: wall width, stand footprint, 1 stairwell turn, and a bolt pattern that doesn't line up with American wall studs. But none of that shows up in a review. Reviews happen in a room that isn't yours, and there's a mini LED on shelves right now at $19.99 with no anti-glare layer on it. And every one of these sets is fingerprinting your screen every 15 seconds, including whatever's plugged into the HDMI port. So we start with the number, work that one out, and the rest of this gets easy. Pull up any US retailer's 75-inch page this month, and the spread is close to absurd. $599 at the bottom, $6,999 at the top for TCL's X11L. Same nominal size, same 4K panel, same living room waiting for it. Nearly 12 times the price for the identical number of inches. And the instinct almost everybody has, I've watched it in the comments for years, is that the extra money buys a better picture in some general hand-wavy way. Nicer, richer, whatever the box says. That's not what you're paying for. You're paying for control. How many independently dimmable blocks of lights sit behind that glass, and whether the surface in front of them can survive 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, the number, local dimming zones. A zone is 1 block of LEDs behind the screen that can only be 1 brightness at a time. The whole block together, 1 value. TCL's QM8L is the cleanest case on the market right now because they publish the figure honestly per size. The 75-inch carries 2,584 of them. Now here's the thing I held back from the open, and it's worse than what I told you. That series is marketed as up to 4,000 zones. Up to. That 4,000 belongs to the 98-inch model. Yours gets 2,584, which is a genuinely strong number. I'm not knocking it, but it isn't 4,000, and nothing on that box is going to walk you across the difference. Okay? So let me do this out loud because it takes about 15 seconds, and it's the only arithmetic in this entire video that matters. A 75-inch 16:9 screen is 65.4 inches across and 36.8 tall. Multiply those, 2,400 square inches of glass. Divide by 144, and you're standing at 16.7 square feet. Now take the zone count for your size, not the series headline. That's the assumption I'm making, and it's exactly where this can go wrong on you because plenty of brands only publish the series maximum and let you fill in the rest yourself. If your size isn't listed, you don't have the number yet. You have marketing, 2,584 over 16.7, about 155 zones per square foot. That's it. That's the whole calculation, which means each zone is covering 9/10 of a square inch, about a postage stamp. Run the same division on a set sitting down at 30 zones per square foot, which is roughly where the bargain end of this market lives, and each zone is now covering 4.8 square inches. Same screen, same distance from your couch. Every block of light behind it just got 5 times bigger. And here's why that matters physically, not theoretically. That block can only be 1 brightness. So the second anything bright lands inside it, a street lamp, subtitle, a puck, the entire block has to come up. All of it. The liquid crystal layer in front is supposed to catch the excess, and it does catch most of it. Most. A good VA panel's native contrast runs around 4 to 6,000 to 1, which is a technical way of saying 1 part in 5,000 leaks through anyway. On an IPS type panel, you're closer to 1,200 to 1 part in 1,200. Now spread that leak across a block 5 times larger on a screen 33% bigger than the one you're replacing. What you actually see is a soft gray wash sitting around white subtitles on a letterboxed film. It isn't dramatic. Nobody returns a TV over it. You notice it on night 4, and then you can't unnotice it for 6 years. I'll be straight with you about the limit, though. ZoneHound doesn't tell you tuning. Two sets with identical zone counts can look completely different because one manufacturer hides weak dimming by crushing shadows down into black. You stop seeing halos. You also stop seeing the guy standing in the dark hallway. Zones per square foot tells you the ceiling. It doesn't tell you what they built under it. What it does tell you every time is where the money went. Nobody accidentally puts 2,500 zones behind a panel. And I over-index on this, I know. It's the first column on the sheet I keep, and I've had people tell me to relax about it. I'm not going to. Tell me in the comments what you want torn apart after this one, because I've got a list and I'd rather work off yours. I had this filed for part 3. I'm pulling it forward because if you're buying this week, it's the one that bites first. Samsung's QN8 875-inch $1999 Quantum Mini LED, 144 Hz, the whole 2026 feature run. No anti-glare filter. None. Samsung's own retail guidance puts anti-reflection at the S85 HOLED tier and glare-free above that. This is the tell. $2,000 and the coating is upsell. Let me define this properly because it's a term people nod at without owning. Anti-reflection is an optical layer stack bonded to the front of the panel that scatters and cancels incoming light instead of mirroring it back at you. It's a real bill of materials cost, which is precisely why it gets cut and why it gets cut quietly. 16.7 square feet of glass is the largest reflective surface in most American living rooms. Bigger than the mirror in your hallway, and on a set without that layer, every window behind your couch is on screen with the movie. Here's what that costs you in the order you'll experience it. Week 1, you love it because you unbox at night and everything looks incredible at night. Somewhere in the first Saturday afternoon, you notice you're watching a reflection of your own room during the dark scenes, and then you find out there is no fix. You can't retrofit a coating. You can hang curtains or move the couch or rearrange your room you already liked, and that's the entire menu. To be fair, in a controlled light room, the QN88 is a strong panel, and Tizen is the most polished platform in this group. My honest read is that it's a very good television that has been priced for a room most people don't have. Compare that to the Hisense U7SG. Same $19.99 list, matte anti-reflective panel. RTINGS made it their mid-range 75-inch pick for the year, and Hisense shuffled the lineup so hard for 2026, the U8 moved up into the RGB tier that the U7SG is now the top conventional mini LED they make. Same money, one has the coating, one doesn't. So, my ranking, and I know how this lands, at 75 in, the brand hierarchy most people carry around in their heads is upside down. The Hisense at $2,000 is a better buy than the Samsung at $2,000 for the majority of American living rooms. And the TCL QM8L list price $3,000 and sitting closer to $1998 on Amazon outspecs them both on the one number we just calculated. Half of you are going to hate that. So, tell me which of those 3 is going on your wall and be honest with yourself about whether that's the panel talking or the logo. One more thing before we go comparative, and I'm giving it 9 seconds because that's what it's worth. AI 4K upscaling. Every brand claims it, it's on every box, and it distinguishes exactly nothing between them. Upscaling quality is real. The phrase isn't. Ignore it because upscaling itself is about to matter more than any of this. Most live US sports still isn't 4K. That feed is getting stretched across 16.7 square feet, and the difference between these sets on that one job is bigger than the gap in their zone counts. Every 75-inch TV and every showroom in America is running the same real 4K high dynamic range footage the manufacturer engineered to make that panel look like a window in the wall. Nothing you watch on a Tuesday looks anything like that. Most live US television still isn't 4K. Cable news isn't, plenty of regular season sports isn't. A large share of what lands on your screen arrives as 1080p. Some of it's 720p, compressed hard by whoever's carrying the feed, and that's the picture getting stretched across 16.7 square feet. So, the comparison that decides this between the Hisense U7SG, the Samsung QN88H, the TCL QM8L, and LG's 77-inch C68 isn't the demo reel. It's what each one does with a bad feed, which comes down to the picture processor. That's the chip that has to fill the gap between what the broadcaster sent and what the panel needs. 4K is 8.3 million pixels. 1080p hands it 2.1 million, so the processor invents the other 6.2 million every frame 60 times a second. On a weak processor, you'd notice it in exactly 2 places, and once you've seen them, you'll see them forever. A shimmering fuzz that crawls around jersey numbers and scoreboard graphics, and a smeared watery look across a packed crowd when the camera pans. On a strong one, the fuzz mostly stays buried, but the error is scaled up with the glass, 33% bigger, same as everything else. There's a second thing that shows up on exactly the same shot, and this one you cannot shop for. Dirty screen effect. Faint vertical or horizontal banding baked into the panel's own uniformity, invisible on almost everything, brutally obvious the moment a camera pans across a green pitch or a sheet of ice. That's not a model-level fault. That's a per-unit lottery. Be honest about the limit here. No review can predict yours. RTINGS. Test one sample. You're buying a different one. What you can do is buy inside a return window, put a full screen gray slide on it the first night, and look, 60 seconds costs you nothing. Okay, so, brightness. This is where the box lies to you hardest, and it lies to everybody equally. Peak brightness figures are measured on a 2% or 10% window, a small bright patch on a black background. That's the headline number. That's what goes on the shelf tag, and it's a real measurement of a real thing. Specular highlights, a sun glinting off a car hood. A full field is the whole screen lit. Snow, a daytime stadium, a white browser page, and the gap between those two on the same television routinely runs 2 to 4 times. 2 mechanisms cause it, and they're worth owning because they explain the entire premium tier. On a mini LED set, thousands of tiny LEDs firing at once generate heat, so the driver circuit pulls power back to keep the backlight inside its thermal envelope. On an OLED, every pixel makes its own light, which means every pixel is its own little heater, and the auto brightness limiter clamps full screen output to keep the organic layer from cooking itself. That second one is the part enthusiasts skate past. It's structural. It isn't a tuning choice LG can update away. So, think about what you'd sit down to in a bright room at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The Hisense and the TCL, both mini LED, both with anti-reflective front layers, hold a watchable image through a Saturday. The Samsung at the same $1999 holds brightness fine and then hands it back to the window because, and this is the thing I pulled forward earlier, there's no anti-glare filter on it. And the LG per pixel perfect in a dark room is the one that gives up soonest with the curtains open. My honest read, in a light-controlled room, the LG wins, and it isn't close. In an average American great room with 2 windows, it comes 4th out of 4. Same television, the room decides. Now refresh rate quickly because there's a trap here that's costing people money right now. Motion rate 240, motion rate 480, VRR 288. None of those are refresh rates. They're interpolation and marketing constructs sitting on top of whatever the panel physically does, and Samsung's own 2026 range demonstrates it. The step-down mini LED tiers below the QM8L drop to 50 to 60 Hz native while keeping the same premium processor branding upstairs. 60 Hz native means judder on horizontal pans and no 120 Hz console gaming on a box that says 480. TCL runs a quieter version of the same trap. On the QM7L, a 144 Hz input works on 2 of its 4 HDMI ports. 2. So, if your console, your PC, and your soundbar's return channel all want a port, somebody's losing, and you'll find that out on setup night with the box already flattened in the garage, which reminds me, and I'll keep it short, the number of people who buy a 144 Hz panel, never plug in a console, and watch broadcast television on it for 6 years is enormous. Nothing wrong with that. It's just money spent on a spec that will never once be invoked. Anyway, back to the 4 sets. Half of you are going to disagree with this one. There is no 75-inch OLED, LG, and Samsung jump straight from 65 to 77. 67.1 in wide instead of 65.4. So if you measured your wall for 75, you didn't measure for this. And the C6H at 77 runs $3,699 against a TCL QM8L that's been sitting near $1,998. That's the gap the OLED advice never mentions. I'll give LG credit where it's earned, though, because they did something unusual this year, and almost nobody noticed. The C6 isn't one television. The 77-inch, 83-inch models use LG's primary RGB tandem 2.0 panel and get badged C6H. 65 and below get the standard WOLED. Lower peak brightness, slightly narrower color. So, at this size, the big one is the better one. That's backwards from how every product line in consumer electronics normally works. And if you're buying 77-inch OLED, it's the single best news in this video. Tell me where you land on that, because I've got a strong opinion, and I know it splits the room, right? This is the part that made me re-outline the whole video. Automatic content recognition, ACR. Every major smart TV platform ships with it, switched on out of the box. And what it does is take a fingerprint of the pixels currently on your panel and match them against a content database to identify what you're watching. Read that mechanism again because it's the whole story. It reads the panel, not the streaming app, which is why the peer-reviewed measurement work presented at the ACM Internet Measurement Conference found what it found. LG sets dispatching to ACR servers roughly every 15 seconds, Samsung sets roughly every 60, and the capture included content arriving over HDMI, your game console, your cable box, the laptop you plugged in to work off a big screen. That's the thread I opened with, and the debt is cleared. 15 seconds on a 4-hour evening, that's 960 captures of your living room screen. And they don't call it ACR anywhere in the menu. Samsung calls it Viewing Information Services, LG calls it Live Plus, Vizio Viewing Data, Roku Smart TV Experience. Not one of those names tells a normal person what they're agreeing to, which I'd argue is precisely the design. This stopped being a privacy blog complaint in December of 2025 when the Texas Attorney General filed a consumer protection suit against Samsung, LG, Sony, Hisense, and TCL. All 5 alleging they misrepresented the collection and never got meaningful consent. Samsung settled in February 2026 and agreed to put clear, conspicuous consent screens in front of Texas residents. Now, why fight that hard for a setting? Follow the revenue. LG has publicly stated its web OS advertising and content business cleared a $1 trillion target. Industry estimates put Samsung ads somewhere in the $700 to $750 million range annually. 10 years ago, a television was a thing you bought. It's now a thing that earns every night for 6 years, whether or not you ever click anything. And that reframes the entire tier structure we've been comparing, because the cheap sets are subsidized by what happens after the sale. Which brings me to the strangest recommendation I've had to make all year. The best value on the American market at this size right now is a television that technically doesn't exist anymore. Samsung QN9OF. 75-inch launched at $3,299, and there is no successor. Samsung killed the QN9O line outright for 2026. No QN9OH. Nothing at that tier at all. So, remaining stock is clearing, and a discontinued flagship is the one place in this market where you buy last year's engineering at this year's price and lose nothing for it because a panel doesn't age sitting in a warehouse. Glare-free front layer, high zone count, full bandwidth ports. What it costs you is optionality. When it's gone, there's no version 2, and you're back at $19.99 for a set with no coating on it. Now the 4 from the open, paying them all right here. Wall width. 64.4 inches of panel wants about 70 inches of clear wall. 72 if you went 77-inch OLED. Stand footprint. Splayed feet at this size can span 55 to 60 inches, so measure the credenza, not the wall. A center pedestal only needs the middle of it, the stairwell. Measure your narrowest turn against carton height before you order, because a flattened box is a refused delivery and restocking argument. And the bolt pattern. VESA 600 millimeters is 23.6 inches across. American framing is 16 inches on center. Those two numbers never line up, which means a 600 pattern needs a mount with a rail spanning 2 stud bays, and the standard bracket you grabbed off the shelf finds that out for you with the TV on the floor and the drywall already open. None of the 4 is a picture problem. All 4 are returns. Okay, so the cost nobody models. Year 4. The power supply board is the most common electrical failure in a modern television, and it doesn't fail early, 3 to 5 years. That's roughly how long heat cycling takes to work through cheaper capacitors running on a thinner thermal margin. The board warms every night you watch and cools every night you don't, and cheap parts have less room inside that swing. The margin is where the years live. What it does to your wallet is the part that surprises people. Out of warranty service on a 75-inch set, Call Out Plus board runs somewhere around 60 to 80% of just replacing the television. Panel level repair isn't offered. So, a $650 set with a $400 fault never gets fixed, it goes to the curb, and the $650 was never the price added up honestly on that tier. $650 for the set, $80 for a mount, $180 for a sound bar, because 20 watts spread across 16.7 square feet cannot carry dialogue, $110 in cables and surge protection, $200 in electricity over 5 years, $1,220, and it's the tier most likely to need replacing inside that same window. Roughly double the sticker price. That is the tell. Best overall, and it's the clearance play. Samsung's QN9OF while it lasts. Best value, and it's the one I'd put my own money behind. TCL's QM8L. 2,584 zones over 16.7 square feet. 155 per square foot running near 1998. That's the answer to the number I opened this video with. Nobody printed it. You just did the arithmetic yourself. So group yourself honestly. Bright Room, Windows, Daytime Sport, Hisense U7SG, or the QM8L. Both with anti-reflective panels, and skip the Samsung at that price. Dark Room, Film First, 72 inches of wall, C6H at $3,699. And remember, the 77 gets the better panel than the 65 does. Renting, can't drill, center pedestal, tape measure, and buy inside the return window. Under 6.5 feet from the couch, buy 65. A 65-inch flagship beats a 75-inch budget set on everything, and it'll cost you less. That one splits the room every time, so vote in the comments. QM8L at $1,998 or C6H6 at $3,699. Which one's going on the wall? To be fair, I've argued myself out of that position twice this year and landed back on it both times. Anyway, 2 purchases. $80 total, and they matter more than any spec above. A streaming stick, so the platform's advertising and app deprecation timeline stop being your problem. And a surge protector, because it defends against the exact failure we just costed out. Then go into the menu, viewing information services on Samsung, Live Plus on LG, and switch it off. Here's what's actually happening. That box wasn't written for you. It was written for the version of you standing under showroom lighting with 9 minutes to decide. And my honest read is that the whole spec sheet is engineered around that 9 minutes, which is the entire reason this channel exists and why subscribing Nextgen Picks to keeps the arithmetic independent. One more thing landed while I was building this. Sony signed its television business over to TCL, 5149, a joint venture called Bravia Incorporated, operating from April 2027. The sets on shelves now are among the last Sony-run Sony. That's the next video and the call I'll make on record. QN9OF stock is gone before October. If it isn't, come back to this one and hold me to it.